Reborn, I returned to the day my best friend scammed me and I turned his life into a living hell. In my previous life, my flatmate fooled everyone with a fake lottery ticket. He maxed out all 8 of my credit cards and I was driven to the rooftop by debt collectors as the wind rushed into my collar. I heard his voice message from Marbella laughing on the day I was reborn. He barged into the university halls again, waving his phone. My hand, which had been gripping the bed sheet, loosened and I laughed. As I patted his shoulder, "Mate, what can 5 million even do? Go all out." Chapter 1, the 15th of March 2024. When I sprang up from the bed, my back was drenched in cold sweat. It wasn't the iron railing of the rooftop, nor the dense sea of car roofs seen from the 14th floor, nor the smell of smoke from the bald guy at the debt collection company as he grabbed my collar and breathed into my face. It was the upper bunk, the yellowed ceiling of room 316 inches, the halls of residence, the Wayne Rooney poster Zach had stuck on the wall, the pothos plant I'd kept on the windowsill for half a semester. Its leaves were still green. I looked down at my hands, clean, no cigarette burns, no cuts from barbed wire, and no circular mark on the wrist left by a debt collector extinguishing a cigarette, but the phone vibrated. Friday, the 15th of March 2024. Sunny. I stared at those 6 numbers for a full 10 seconds, and a memory in my mind surged out like a floodgate had been opened. 37 collection calls a day, text message bombardment. Even my mom's number was dug up. Credit card overdue notices flooded the student mailbox like snowflakes. 14,378 pounds in credit card notices, all under my name. Then came the rooftop. The wind was strong, so strong I could barely keep my eyes open. I stood at the edge of the 14th floor. My fingers gripping the railing, knuckles white. Down below, someone was playing badminton, their laughter drifting up through 14 floors, sounding like it came from another world. What I heard last wasn't the sound of wind, it was Zach's voice. I added him with another account and he didn't know it was me. He laughed in the voice message, his voice lazy with the background sounds of ocean waves and a woman's playful whining. He said, "That idiot is still helping me pay off my debts." The moment I thought of those words, my hands suddenly clenched the bed sheet, fingernails dug into the cotton fabric, joints emitting a faint creaking sound. At that very moment, the sound of dress shoes echoed down the hallway, tap 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 from far to near, quick steps with an excitement that couldn't be contained at all. The door was flung open with a slap. Zach stood at the doorway, his hair a mess, his face flushed red, and the light in his eyes was startlingly bright. He held up his phone, his hand trembling. Liam, look at this, damn it, look at this." He rushed to my bedside in a few quick steps and shoved his phone right in front of my eyes. On the screen was a lottery app notification with a golden border and bold red text. "Congratulations. The Euro Millions lottery ticket you purchased for the 2024 31st draw has won a prize of £5 million to 5 million. When I saw this message in my previous life, I was even more excited than he was. I jumped off the bed, spun him around twice in the room, nearly knocking over Charlie's computer desk. I was genuinely happy for him. He was my best mate. Had shared a bunk bed with me since our first year, played football together, skipped lectures together, and gotten drunk until 3 a.m., hugging the toilet and throwing up for years. If he won 5 million, what difference would it make compared to me winning 5 million? I even brought it up myself. I said, "Zach, want to use my credit card first? It'll take time for the 5 million to arrive. You can spend it now and pay me back later." He said, "Okay." Then he swiped the first one, the second one, the third one. I kept swiping until the 8th one by the time the National Lottery informed him that the winning message was due to a system bug. He had already changed his phone number overnight, vacated his room, and vanished without a trace. The bill of £143,700 was like a mountain weighing on my shoulders alone. And my mum, who worked on construction sites laying bricks and scaffolding, would regularly transfer £1,500 into my account every month for living expenses. I didn't dare to tell her. I couldn't let her know that the university student she worked so hard to support had been deceived like this. So, I went up to the rooftop. Now, Zach stood in front of me. The same expression, the same sound of leather shoes, the same features distorted with excitement. Mate, 5 million. I won 5 million. My right hand was beneath the duvet, my fingernails digging into my palm. A sharp pain shot through and warm liquid oozed out, trickling down between my fingers in 2 drops. But I laughed, laughing more genuinely than in the previous life, because in my past life, I was happy. In this life, I am certain. Really, I took his phone and pretended to look at it carefully. System vulnerability push. I checked in my previous life. The lottery app had a server bug on March 15th. Randomly sending fake winning notifications to about 300 users. The official announcement clarifying this didn't come until March 29th. That means starting today, Zach will feel like a multi-millionaire for a full 14 days. In those 14 days of my previous life, he spent all my money. In these 14 days of my life, I will make him spend all his own paths. Holy £5 million. I jumped off the bed, threw my arm around his shoulder with such force that he stumbled. Zach, you've made it. You're really rich now. He wobbled in my arms, grinning widely. I told you I had good luck. The numbers I bought last week were the ones from my dream. So, how do you plan to spend it? He rubbed his hands together. Pay off Klarna first, then get a new phone. Is that all? I interrupted him, my tone laced with just the right amount of disdain. 5 million. And all you're doing is paying off your credit card and buying a new phone. He froze. I patted him on the back, speaking slowly and deliberately with the utmost sincerity. Mate, when have you ever been this stingy? The 5 million is just a matter of time before it hits your account. If you don't treat yourself well now, how can you live up to your luck? His eyes lit up. What do you think? First, apply for a few credit cards. Banks these days offer high-limit cards for young people, and approval is fast with your lottery win screenshot. The limit won't be low. Then take advantage of all the payday loan apps you can just for a turnover of about 10 days. Once you pay it all off at once, you'll even earn some credit points for free. Those words in my previous life were spoken to me by him exactly as they were. Only in the past life. He used my card and took out loans under my name. In this life, I'll return them to him. He slapped his thigh. That's right. It's only 2 weeks anyway. Once the 5 million hits, this little amount is nothing. That's the spirit. I smiled and patted his shoulder, my fingers resting lightly on his collarbone. Mate, enjoy what you should enjoy. Don't save. Go all out. He happily sat down at the computer desk and opened the browser to search for the credit card application portal. I lay back on the bed and pulled the duvet up to my chin. The blood on my palm had dried, forming a thin dark red crust. I turned my head to glance at the lower side of the upper bunk. Above it was a line written by Zach in black marker. Boss Zach was here. The last time I saw these words in my previous life was when I was dragged back from the rooftop and returned to the room to collect my things. Everyone's luggage had been taken away. The 4 beds were empty. Leaving only these words hanging overhead, I crouched on the ground and cried for 40 minutes. Now, looking at the same words, I feel nothing at all. No, there's one thing. Expectation. I closed my eyes and heard Zach typing furiously on the keyboard, humming a tune, occasionally blurting out, haha, credit limit £20,000. Zach, in your previous life, you owed me a life. In this life, you will repay it yourself. Chapter 2. The next morning, Zach did not go to his lectures. He sat in the room all morning making phone calls, his voice so loud that it could be heard in the opposite room 318. Yeah. Applying for a credit card. Yes, I'm a university student, but I have proof of income. What's the credit limit? £20,000. Okay, let's do it. I sat at my desk, flipping through the references for my dissertation. My peripheral vision constantly fixed on him. In one morning, he applied for credit cards from 4 different banks. Barclays, NatWest, Lloyds, HSBC. At 2:00 the afternoon, he went to a bank branch outside campus and returned with a brown paper envelope in hand containing a temporary credit card. NatWest approved the fastest, directly giving him £25,000. He waved the card at me. The others should be approved within these 2 days, too. I put down my pen and adjusted my glasses. How much can you spend in total now? He counted on his fingers. Klarna £12,000. ClearPay £20,000. NatWest £25,000, plus the debit card in hand with over £3,000. About £60,000 in total. £60,000. I frowned deliberately, putting on that expression of concern for a friend. Zach, a guy with £5 million and you only have £60,000 to spare. What did you wear on the day you claimed the prize? Flip-flops. He was taken aback by what I said. If you don't feel embarrassed, I will feel embarrassed for you. I opened the drawer, took out my phone, and showed him a page of a payday loan app. I've researched this platform before. The interest rate is low, approval is fast, and you can borrow for up to 30 days. Just take a photo of both sides of your ID, and the money will be in your account within 3 minutes. Isn't this a loan app? He hesitated for a moment. You're about to have $5 million, borrowing $30,000 to $50,000 for half a month. How much interest could there be? A few £100. I said this while looking into his eyes, very calm, very sincere. Exactly the same look he had when he persuaded me to use my credit card in my previous life. He thought for 3 seconds and smiled. You're right. He picked up his phone, took a photo of his ID, filled in the information, and completed facial recognition. 3 minutes later, his phone chimed with a notification. £20,000 had been credited. I made a mental note. Day 1. £60,000. Day 2. £80,000. Still far from the amount he owed me in my previous life. No rush. In the afternoon, I went to Student Services to report my lost student ID and apply for a replacement. Then I went to the bank, temporarily froze all my credit cards, changed all the passwords, and locked the credit limits to 0. In my previous life, he took advantage of my carelessness, rummaged through my wallet, and swiped my credit cards one by one. In this lifetime, he couldn't even touch the door. When I returned to the halls, Zach wasn't there. On the table were 2 shopping bags, a pair of limited edition Nike running shoes, and a North Face windbreaker. The tags were still attached, and I glanced at the price tags. Together, they totaled £4,300. I locked my ID card, bank cards, and wallet in the cabinet and hung the key around my neck. When Zach came back in the evening, he was carrying a Dyson paper bag, a vacuum cleaner. Charlie poked his head down from the top bunk. Why did you buy a vacuum cleaner? Our room is only 12 square meters. It's not a vacuum cleaner. It's a hairdryer. Zach opened the box, took out the silver gray hairdryer, and blew his hair in front of the mirror. £3,900. Comfortable. Charlie glanced at me. I smiled at him without saying a word. Charlie was the third among us in the flat. He was a down-to-earth guy studying computer science. He didn't talk much, but his eyes were sharp. In my previous life, he was the first one to sense something was off, but by then I had already lent out my card. Zach, I called out to him. He turned around. Tomorrow's Saturday. Shall we lads grab a meal? You're a rich man now. Don't you want to act like one? He grinned widely, showing his back teeth. Absolutely. I've been thinking about it. Tomorrow noon. The premium Hawksmoor Steakhouse behind campus. I'm treating the whole flat. What's a whole flat? Let's treat the whole course. The whole course. He paused, taken aback. Think about it. You can't possibly hide something as big as $5 million instead of letting others gossip behind your back. Why not just throw a grand party and let everyone know? Zach has made it big. When I said made it big, I saw his Adam's apple move. Vanity. In my previous life, I saw through it clearly. Zach's vanity was heavier than his life. He wasn't just trying to spend money. He wanted the look of admiration from everyone watching him spend. He really slapped the table. Alright. Treating the whole course. Damn. It's my final year, and I've never treated anyone. This time I'll show them. That night he posted something on his Instagram story. The image was a screenshot of the winning notification and the caption was just 3 words, "It's sorted." The number of likes broke 200 inches 15 minutes. The comment section exploded. Holy crap. Is this for real? Congratulations, mate. Take me with you. From now on, your boss Zach. I lay in bed scrolling through these comments and when I reached the bottom, I saw a girl named Sophie leaving a heart emoji. Sophie. In my previous life, she appeared 3 days after Zach won the lottery. They were together for less than 2 weeks before Zach ran away and she disappeared with him. Later, I found out that over £30,000 from my credit card was spent by her. I've seen the photos she took in Marbella wearing a newly bought floral dress, stepping in high-heeled sandals, standing by the infinity pool of the hotel. The background was the setting sun. The foreground was my blood worth £143,700. Seeing her heart emoji, my lips twitched. No rush. Those who should come won't miss a single one. Early on the 3rd day, Zach left the halls. He told me he was going to the bank to withdraw money, planning to treat everyone at noon. I didn't stop him, but after he left, I did one thing. Opened his laptop. I knew the password. It hadn't changed since our first year. 6 ones. I opened his browser and checked the browsing history. Indeed, 3 payday loan platform registration pages. He didn't sleep last night and managed to secure 3 more loans. Wonga for £15,000, MonzoFlex for £8,000, and a smaller app called QuickQuid with a limit of £12,000. Combined with the previous ones, his total debt had now exceeded £110,000. I restored the browser history to its original state and shut down the laptop. Sitting on the chair, I picked up the glass of tap water on the table and took a sip. £110,000. Not enough. In my previous life, you made me shoulder £143,000. In this life, you should at least double that. I picked up my phone and sent a WhatsApp message to someone. Big Terry, I have a friend who wants to borrow some money from you. A large amount. Is that okay? The other person replied instantly. How large? Starting from £200,000. Did you mention the interest to him? He doesn't care about the interest. Alright, bring him over to meet. I put down my phone. This bloke is named Terry Davies, who runs a private lending business outside of campus. The interest rate is 3% doubling upon overdue and the collection methods are extremely professional. In my previous life, it was his men who cornered me in the hall's corridor, pressed my head against the wall 3 times, and said if I didn't repay the money, they'd go find my mum at her construction site. I still remember the feeling of the wall plaster scraping against my forehead. This time around, it's his turn. Sunlight streamed in through the window, landing on the pothos leaves. It was very quiet, very warm. I squinted my eyes. It was completely different from when I was standing on the rooftop. The wind that day was cold. Today's light is warm. I have come back to life. Chapter 3. At 11 inches the morning, in a private room on the 2nd floor of Hawksmoor Steakhouse, Zach had reserved 2 large tables in advance with 26 seats out of our entire course of 31 people, except for 3 who were away on placements. He had invited everyone else. By the time I arrived, more than half of the private room was already filled. The steaks hadn't even started grilling yet. But the atmosphere was already buzzing with excitement. Everyone was looking at Zach. He stood in the center of the table holding an open bottle of beer in his hand. His expression as if he were standing on a podium. Here it comes. Here it comes. Everyone sit down. Order whatever you want today. Bring out everything on the menu. His voice overpowered the entire private room. The lads and girls sitting nearby were either taking photos, whispering among themselves, or already flipping through the menu. Boss Zach is legendary. How much is this meal going to cost? Their family doesn't even care about $5 million. I sat by the door, picking up a piece of bread. After chewing a couple times, it had no flavor. Charlie sat beside me, stirring his sauce with his fork before leaning in and whispering, "Liam, is that lottery ticket of his real?" I chewed on the bread and glanced at him. If it's shown on the app, how could it be fake? Charlie didn't say anything more, but his frown never eased. He was the only one in our flat majoring in computer-related fields. In my previous life, he had told me that 99% of online prize-winning information was fake and advised me not to get involved. I didn't listen. I don't need him to remind me in this lifetime. Halfway through the steak meal, the door to the private room was pushed open. Sophie walked in. She was wearing a white square neck top with a thin gold necklace draped over her collarbone. Her long hair falling over her shoulders and her makeup was very clean. Last life, the first time I saw her, she was dressed exactly like this. At that time, I thought she was quite pretty. Later, when someone blocked me at the debt collection company, they threw in my face a list of things she had bought with my credit card. £32,000. The most expensive item being an LV bag worth £9,800. Now, as she walked in, Zach's eyes went wide. "Sophie, sit over here." He stood up, freeing the seat beside him, and courteously pulled out the chair. Sophie smiled and sat down, her voice sweet as candy. "Zach, I heard you won a big prize. Congratulations. Just a small thing. Just a small thing." Zach waved his hand. "Order whatever you want. Today it's your call." Sophie hesitated for 3 seconds, then opened the menu and added an order of a 5 Wagyu, a serving of Atlantic lobster, and 2 portions of premium cuts. I lowered my head and took a sip of my drink. Everything was following the script from my past life. But there was one scene that was different in my past life. When it came time to pay for this meal, Zach used my card. He said his own card had reached its limit and it would only be for 2 days, after which he would pay me back. I didn't hesitate at all before handing it over. This lifetime, halfway through the meal, Zach went to the toilet. 5 minutes later he returned and as he passed by me suddenly whispered in my ear, "Liam, I've used my card too much today. When we settle the bill later, here it comes." My heart tightened slightly, but my facial expression didn't change at all. "What's wrong? Can you cover it for me first? Just for this meal. I'll transfer the money to you tomorrow." I turned my head slightly. Looking at him, he smiled naturally, his eyes holding something so familiar it made me sick. That kind of look that takes it for granted. "So certain you won't refuse." In my past life, I pulled out my card. This life, rich boy. My cards are frozen. I spread my hands, my tone carrying just the right amount of apology. My student loan had some issues the other day and the bank locked all my cards. I'm sorting it out these days. His smile froze for 0.3 seconds. It was extremely brief. So brief that the people around him wouldn't notice. But I saw it. The corner of his mouth twitched and a flicker of something flashed in his eyes. Not disappointment, but annoyance. In that instant, I confirmed one thing. In my past life, when he borrowed my card, it wasn't because he was in a hurry. It was because he had planned from the start to make me pay. "Oh, I see." He quickly regained his smile and patted me on the shoulder. "It's okay. It's okay. I'll think of a way." He returned to his seat and took out his phone, scrolling for 2 minutes. I knew what he was doing, checking which online lending platform still had available credit. 2 minutes later, he stood up and raised his beer glass. "Come on, everyone. Let's keep drinking." When it came time to settle the bill, I glanced at the receipt, £3,480. He paid with Klarna. When leaving the steakhouse, Sophie walked ahead, holding his arm, and the two of them chatted and laughed. I walked behind, side by side with Charlie. "Liam," Charlie suddenly spoke up. He hesitated for a moment, then said, "I just ran into him in the loo. He was on the phone. Seems like he was borrowing money from some platform. The amount he mentioned. I heard him say, borrow another £20,000. I didn't respond. Charlie's voice dropped even lower. "Did he actually go to claim the prize?" You know, showing a win on the app and actually cashing it in are two different things. Right. I know, I said. Then you. If he wants to spend it, let him spend it, I interrupted him. My voice calm. His money, his business. Charlie opened his mouth but said nothing more. Back at the flat, Zach and Sophie went to a hotel off campus. I sat alone at the desk and opened my laptop. I drew a timeline on it. March 15th, Zach's total debt is approximately £110,000. March 16th, expenses for treating guests amount to £3,480, plus hotel spending of about £800, totaling £4,280. Online loan increased by approximately £20,000. Total approximately £130,000. I closed the notebook and lightly tapped my fingers on the desk. It's time to call Big Terry. Zach's online loan limit is almost used up and his credit card is nearing the ceiling. His desire to spend is expanding. But banks and platforms are tightening their reins at this moment. If I just hand him a bigger shovel, he'll dig the hole to the bottom himself. I dialed Big Terry's phone. Big Terry, are you free tomorrow? My friend wants to meet you. Sure. Same place. 3:00 inches the afternoon. After hanging up the phone, I pulled open the drawer and dug out an old notebook from the very back. I flipped to the last page where there was a line of text I had written during the final days of my previous life. Zach, I treat you like a brother. What do you treat me as? I wrote that on the rooftop back then and threw it away right after. Now I stared at those words for a long time, then turned to a new page and wrote another line. I know the answer now. I closed my notebook and turned off the light. The moon was bright outside the window, making the eyes on the Wayne Rooney poster seem like they were staring at me. I closed my eyes. I slept very well. Since coming back from rebirth, it was the first time I didn't have a dream. Chapter 4. On the afternoon of the fourth day, I took Zach to an alley just outside the northern gate of the university. At the end of the alley stood an off-license shop. Its signboard faded, with a black Range Rover parked in front. Big Terry is inside. When I pushed the door open, a strong scent of builder's tea hit me. Terry Davies was sitting behind the counter in the inner room. Around 40 years old with a buzz cut and a thick gold chain around his neck. He was fat, but solidly built. The kind of solid that could punch a dent in a door frame. In my past life, I saw him in a different scene. He was sitting behind the same table with a copy of my IOU in front of him, one foot propped up on the desk. Two young men in tracksuits stood beside him, one of them gripping a Stanley knife with the blade exposed. Terry glanced at Zach, then looked at me. I nodded. Big Terry, this is the friend I told you about. He won a £5 million jackpot, just a few days away from receiving the money, and wants to make a short-term cash advance. Zach reached out and shook his hand, smiling warmly. Hello, Terry. My friend recommended you, saying you're straightforward and efficient. Terry didn't smile. He poured 3 mugs of tea and pushed one in front of Zach. How much? £200,000. Zach said it very straightforwardly. Terry picked up the mug, took a sip, set it down, looked at Zach, and slowly said, 3% monthly interest. It doubles from the first day of overdue. If it exceeds 15 days, I'll send someone to your place to talk. The monthly interest rate is 3% for £200,000. The monthly interest would be £6,000. If overdue, it doubles to £12,000. After 15 days. I still remember the faces of those 2 lads from my past life. When they cornered me in the hall's corridor, one of them had a tattoo of a snake on his hand. Zach thought for about 2 seconds. All right. He signed the IOU on paper in duplicate with a fingerprint pressed on it. As I stood by and watched that red fingerprint being pressed onto the paper, something inside me made a faint sound like something had shattered. It was as if something had been closed. After leaving Terry Davies, Zach's entire demeanor was different. £200,000 in cash combined with his previous credit card debt and online loans. The amount of money he could freely use exceeded £300,000. A final-year student with over £300,000 in hand and firmly believing he was about to receive £5 million. He's crazy. That afternoon, he took Sophie to the shopping center in the city center. When he came back in the evening, he was carrying 7 or 8 bags, Gucci bags, Burberry scarves, and a pair of Jimmy Choo high heels. Sophie followed behind, holding 2 boxes in her arms, her nails freshly done with a French manicure and tiny rhinestones. Charlie sat at the desk, typing code, not even lifting his head, but I noticed his fingers paused on the keyboard for a moment. Zach threw the bags onto the bed and waved at me. Liam, I'm planning to change cars tomorrow. Do you think a BMW or a Mercedes is better? Do you have a driving license? I asked. He was taken aback for a moment, then waved his hand dismissively. No, but I'll buy the car first and get the license later with money. It doesn't really matter anyway. I nodded, my tone carrying a serious thoughtfulness. A BMW, the 3 Series M Sport. It gives young people a sense of pride when they drive it. He grinned. Sophie wrapped her arms around his waist from behind, resting her chin on his shoulder, and said in a coquettish tone, Zach, when are you going to take me to see the car? Tomorrow. Let's go tomorrow. That night after lights out, I heard Zach tossing and turning on the top bunk, the phone screen flickering intermittently. He was looking at the price list from the BMW dealership. I kept my eyes closed, calculating his debt. Credit cards about £80,000. Online lending platforms 6 about £120,000. Big Terry £200,000. Daily consumption about £30,000. Total approximately £430,000. There are 9 days left until March 29th. 9 days later, when that system vulnerability announcement is released, every penny in his hands will turn into a rope tightening around his neck. The next day, he didn't go to buy the car. It's not that he didn't want to buy it, but the dealership required proof of income and assets, which he couldn't provide. He came back furious, throwing his coat onto the chair as soon as he walked in. A bunch of snobs. I'm a £5 million man, yet they won't let me take delivery of the car. I put down my book and walked over to pour him a glass of water. Don't be angry. Once the prize money arrives, you can go show them the transfer record of $5 million and see the look on their faces. He took the water glass and gulped down a big mouthful, catching his breath for a few seconds before suddenly looking at me. Liam, tell me, when exactly will this prize money arrive? The lottery center needs time to review it, I said with certainty. Large amounts usually take half a month to a month. Check the app to see if there's a progress tracker. He immediately opened his phone and started swiping through the app. I knew he wouldn't find any entry for checking progress because there was no prize redemption at all. That notification was just a buggy push. Not even a single order number. Sure enough, after flipping through for 3 minutes, his expression turned a bit off. Why isn't there any entry to check? Maybe the system hasn't been updated yet. I took his phone, pretended to flip through it for a bit, then handed it back. Call customer service and ask. He made the call. After waiting 4 minutes, the customer service line finally connected and a robotic female voice told him, your inquiry has been recorded and will be replied to within 5 to 7 working days. He hung up and his expression improved slightly. 5 to 7 working days, which means we'll have news next week. Yes, just wait calmly. I patted his shoulder and returned to my desk. 5 to 7 working days, just around March 29th. I've called that customer service number in my past life, too. Back then, it was because Zach asked me to help him inquire. I remember every word the customer service said because those words later turned into a joke. A person who had been scammed called another system to confirm they'd been scammed, and the other party didn't even transfer them to a human agent, just dismissed them with an automated reply. Zach stared blankly at his phone screen for a while, then opened his social media feed. He posted a new update on Instagram. The photo was a picture of him and Sophie at a shopping center, with the Gucci logo wall behind them. The caption read, buying some small things for my missus, I'll have to suffer a little before the $5 million arrives. Down in the comments, Sophie replied with a kiss emoji and the words, my man is the best. I glanced at it and exited the feed. I opened one of my own notes which was densely filled with timestamps, amounts, and keywords from every sentence Zach had said. I didn't record it. No need. Every penny he spent is recorded on the online lending platform. Every IOU he signed is in Terry's drawer and every Instagram post he made is on the internet. He is personally weaving a web for himself. And the only thing I did was to give him a gentle push at every moment he hesitated. That's all. Chapter 5. March 22nd. The 8th day. Cracks appeared. That morning while I was having breakfast in the cafeteria, Zach called. His voice was a bit off, as if he hadn't slept all night. Liam, where are you now? Cafeteria. What's wrong? Come back for a moment. When I got back to the flat, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, clutching his phone, which displayed a string of missed calls, 14, all different numbers originating from various places across the country, calling to urge repayment. His voice was muffled. Multiple platforms called at the same time, saying the first installment repayment date has arrived. The first batch of online loans he took out last week has today as the repayment date. How much on each platform? I asked. He flipped through the bills on his phone, his fingers slightly trembling. Wonga £4,300, ClearPay £2,700, and two smaller platforms adding up to over £5,000. Totaling just over 0. I sat opposite him, my tone calm and unconvinced. You still have money on hand, right? Pay it off first. Once the 5 million comes in, this little amount won't even be a problem. He hesitated for a moment. I don't have much cash left. I've been spending quite fast these past few days. How much have you spent? He didn't answer. But I knew over the past 8 days, he spent at least £70,000 on Sophie bags, clothes, shoes, cosmetics, 2 hotel stays, and 1 high-end Japanese meal. On himself, he spent about £30,000. Clothes, trainers, electronics, and treating others. Daily expenses and miscellaneous costs aren't included. Over £300,000 in ammunition has already been spent. More than half of it gone. The remainder is still being held by Big Terry. Then let's take a bit from Terry's share first to cover the online loan platforms, I said. Platform collections are the most annoying. They call every day and affect your mood, right? He nodded, picked up his phone, and sent a WhatsApp message to Terry. Terry replied quickly. The money is in the account. You can transfer it yourself. I've already accounted for the receipts on my end. Zach transferred £15,000 and paid off the monthly bills for several platforms separately. After finishing, he leaned back against the headboard and let out a long sigh, but he hadn't finished venting his frustration. His phone rang again. He glanced at the number and his expression changed. It wasn't a debt collection platform's number, but a local landline. Hello. He answered the phone and listened for about 30 seconds. Then his face turned pale. Sitting across from him, I clearly saw the color drain from his face layer by layer. First his lips, then his cheeks, and finally even his ears took on an unnatural shade of grayish-white. What do you mean? You need to confirm. No. Check again. My app clearly shows. His voice grew louder and louder. His fingers gripping the phone case until it was deformed. After hanging up the phone, he sat there motionless. What's wrong? I asked. He turned to look at me and there was something in his eyes that I was very familiar with. Fear. The people from the National Lottery HQ called. They said about my number. They're still verifying it. They told me not to worry. There will be a result. Verifying. That's exactly what they said in my previous life too before the National Lottery officially issued an announcement. They first called users who received the bug notification. Their statement was vague. Currently verifying. Please wait patiently. They didn't say, you didn't win. It's not exactly saying, you've won. It's more like under verification. This phrasing leaves room for interpretation. So someone like Zach wouldn't give up hope after hearing it. He'd think verification means there's still a chance. Sure enough, it should be fine. He clenched his fist. They said there would be a result. It must be a procedural matter. Definitely. I agreed with him. Large prize redemptions undergo strict review. It's normal. His breathing gradually calmed down, but I noticed his hand was still trembling. That afternoon, Sophie came to the student halls. It was her first time visiting. When she walked in, she wrinkled her nose. The flat smelled rather unpleasant. After 4 years of being lived in by 4 lads, apart from Charlie's desk, which was clean, the rest of the place was hard to describe. Zach, once you collect that bonus this month, let's move out. There are fully furnished 1-bedroom flats outside campus, renting for only £3,000 a month. She sat in Zach's chair, legs crossed, her fingers fiddling with the metal clasp of her brand new Gucci chain bag. Zach wrapped his arm around her shoulder, forcing a smile. All right, we'll move once the bonus comes in. Have you ever thought about buying a house? She tilted her head to look at him. The deposit wouldn't be much, right? With $5 million, you could pay in full, even within Zone 1-inch London. Zach's expression flickered. There was something complicated in that flicker. Guilt, anxiety, and a stubborn unwillingness to be seen through. Buying a house isn't urgent. Let's just get the award first. True. Sophie smiled and took a selfie with her phone. After she left, Zach sat alone at the desk, staring blankly for a long time. It was past 10 inches the evening when Charlie returned from his shower and noticed Zach wasn't there. He had gone to the hotel again. Charlie was drying his hair when he suddenly spoke up. Liam, I looked into that lottery ticket thing of his. My hand paused as I turned the page. That app was reported last month for sending incorrect push notifications. Someone posted on Reddit saying they received a fake winning notification. The post was deleted but the cash is still there. After speaking, he looked at me. His gaze heavy. You knew? He asked. I remained silent for 3 seconds. Then I closed the book and looked at him. I know. Charlie's expression changed. It wasn't surprise but a complex scrutiny. He was seeing me in a new light. Why didn't you tell him then? I didn't answer that question. I asked another one. Do you know anything about my student loan? He shook his head. My dad suffered a work-related injury during my 2nd year of secondary school and passed away. My mum worked alone on a construction site carrying scaffolding, earning £4,000 a month to support my university education. I use credit cards for emergencies. When our household finances get tight, I swipe first and pay back next month. My voice was very calm. 8 credit cards with a total credit limit of £143,700. Charlie blinked. If he knew that lottery ticket was fake, what would he do? I looked into Charlie's eyes. Would he return the money? Would he take on the debts himself? The payday loans he owes? The £200,000 he owes Big Terry? He wouldn't. Charlie said he wouldn't. I repeated, he would find someone to take the fall for him. Last time I stopped, the words last time almost slipped out. Ever since I've known him, every time he's gotten into trouble, someone else has covered for him. Last term, he lost £3,000, playing cards with people outside the university, and I paid it back for him. In his 3rd year, he failed 2 modules, and I wrote the appeal materials for him. He never faces the consequences himself. Charlie remained silent for a long time. So, you did it on purpose? Not a question. It's a declarative sentence. You won't tell anyone, I said. He glanced at me, then looked away and turned off the lamp. I know nothing. In the darkness, I heard him turn over. Then he said his final words. You be careful yourself. I smiled faintly in the darkness. Don't worry. No one can hurt me in this lifetime. Chapter 6. March 25th. 4 days before the announcement, Zach's mental state had already started to change. He stopped posting on Instagram a few days ago. He was still Boss Zach, posting 3 times a day on stories with photos either of shopping bags or hotel lobbies and the comments section filled with flattery. But after that phone call from the National Lottery HQ, he seemed as if something had suddenly been pulled out of him. He started checking his phone frequently, not scrolling through TikTok, not chatting. He kept opening that lottery app, repeatedly looking at the winning notification, like someone constantly pulling out an expired contract, trying to find a clause that still said, "Still valid." In the faded text, the collection calls were coming more and more, not the polite reminders from last time. The repayment date for the second batch of online loans had arrived, and one payment from the first batch hadn't been made on time. Interest had already started compounding. That noon, while he was having lunch in the cafeteria, his phone rang 3 times. Each time he hung up, and after hanging up, he placed the phone face down on the table. I was sitting opposite him, watching as he poked at his food with his fork for a long time without taking a single bite. "Another reminder call?" I asked. He nodded, biting his lip without saying a word. "How much do you owe in total now?" He lowered his head and calculated for a moment. "My credit card is almost £50,000. Online loans add up to over £80,000. And Terry." He sighed. He didn't continue. He had already spent more than £60,000 of the £200,000 from Big Terry, with the rest still in his account, but that money needed to be repaid with interest. His contract had a monthly interest rate of 3%, meaning the interest on a £200,000 loan was £6,000 a month. His total debt now has already exceeded £330,000. What does £330,000 mean for a final-year university student? It means that even if he finds a job immediately after graduation, earning a monthly salary of £6,000, he would have to save without spending for 5.5 years to pay it all off. If overdue, which he certainly will be, the amount will snowball and grow to a figure he will never be able to repay in his lifetime. "Zach," I put down my fork. My voice gentle. "Why don't you call the National Lottery Center to check on the progress? Don't just wait around." His eyes lit up. "Right, I'll go ask." He picked up his phone and walked outside the cafeteria through the glass doors. I saw him outside on a phone call, his expression gradually shifting from anticipation to anxiety, then to confusion, and finally to an indescribable blankness. He was gone for 20 minutes before he came back. My hands were shaking when I sat down. "They said. Still verifying. They told me to wait for notification." His voice sounded as if pulled up from underwater, muffled and damp. "When will there be a notification?" They didn't mention a specific time. He stared at the plate of cold food in front of him, his eyes suddenly reddening. "Liam, do you think this money won't cause any trouble, will it?" It was the first time he expressed doubt. At this point in his previous life, he had never doubted anything because in that past life he had someone to fall back on. Me, my credit card, my ID, everything of mine. He wasn't anxious, but in this life, there was no one left to rely on by his side. He only had himself, a pile of bills, and a lottery app that grew increasingly silent. "No." I looked into his eyes and said firmly, "The National Lottery is a state institution. Their process is just slow. Wait a few more days." He nodded vigorously, as if forcing himself to believe. That night, when I returned to my room, I discovered that the padlock on my locker had been tampered with. The lock was not opened, but there were slight scratches on the lock surface, marks from being prized with a hard object. My heart sank. It wasn't an accident. In his previous life, it was also at this very moment that he started eyeing my belongings. He first touched my wallet, then my bank card, and finally my ID card. He also started this life, but he couldn't prise it open. I replaced it with a better padlock, took the key off my neck, and sewed it into the inner lining of my underwear waistband. Then I sat at my desk, turned on my phone, and took screenshots of all of Zach's Instagram updates from March 15th to today. Every shopping photo, dinner, invitation video, and bragging post without missing a single one, saved into an encrypted album. These things are not meant to be brought up later to disgust him. That would be too low. These things are evidence. Proof that every penny he borrowed was spent by his own initiative. No one forced him. No one deceived him. All the choices were made by himself. I just said, "Don't skimp." When he hesitated, that's all. Day 9, evening of March 24th. Sophie had an argument with Zach. The reason is simple. She wanted a new model of Apple iPhone. And when Zach said, "Wait a couple of days," she wasn't happy about it. "Aren't you the one who won £5 million? Can't you even spare a phone?" Her voice came from the hallway, sharp enough to be heard throughout the entire floor. Zach coaxed her in a low voice, his words unclear. "When on earth will you get the money? You're not tricking me, are you?" Zach's voice suddenly rose. "Why would I lie to you? The National Lottery Center is reviewing it. It'll be approved in a few days. A few more days. A few more days. You say, a few more days every day. I think you're just a liar." Bang. The door was slammed. The sound of high heels clicked away. When Zach pushed open the flat door and came in, his expression was grim. It wasn't sadness. It was more like the disarray of having one's disguise stripped away. He ignored me and climbed directly onto the upper bunk. The bed frame creaked once, then fell silent. In the darkness, I could hear his heavy intermittent breathing as if he was struggling to hold something back. I stared at the ceiling. In her previous life, Sophie never argued with him because back then she got whatever she wanted because my card was in his hands. In this life, he couldn't hold on anymore. I calculated in my head, there were still 5 days until the announcement date. What will he experience within 5 days? More collection calls. Big Terry's first greeting. Sophie's more intense questioning. And that final answer, the cold, impersonal announcement on the app page. Everything was going according to plan. No, there was no plan. I just stopped being the fool I was in my previous life. I just stopped covering for him anymore. Wind started blowing outside the window again. It's not like the wind on the rooftop back then. That wind used to rush up from below, carrying all the sounds from the world beneath the 14th floor. The wind now is flat, squeezing in through the window crack, brushing past my face. Cool, but not cold. I turned over and wrapped the duvet tighter around myself. Wait 5 more days. Chapter 7. March 29th. From the moment Zach's phone alarm went off, this day was destined to be a long fall. I woke up before him. Actually, I barely slept all night. I opened my eyes at 4:00 inches the morning, staring at the street lights seeping through the gap in the curtains. What was I doing on this day in my previous life on the rooftop? No, on this day in my previous life, I was already in hell. My credit cards were all overdue. Collection calls reached my mum's phone and she cried on the phone asking me, "Liam, did you borrow money at loan shark rates?" I didn't answer her. I was too afraid to answer. That was the last time I ever heard her voice. The phone screen lit up at 7:14 inches the morning. A push notification popped up from that lottery app. I couldn't see Zach's screen. He was on the upper bunk, but I heard the sound. First, the alarm was turned off. Then came the sound of fingers swiping across the screen. Then silence. A long silence. It lasted about 15 seconds. Then the upper bunk shook violently. He sat up. No, that's not right. His voice drifted down from above, hoarse and broken like a crumpled piece of paper. This can't be. I kept my eyes closed and didn't move. The upper bunk shook again, and the ladder made a metallic clanging sound. He was climbing down. His foot missed a step, and his body slammed heavily against the ladder with a dull thud. But he didn't stop. Stumbling down. I opened my eyes. He stood in the middle of the room holding a phone in his hand. The screen light illuminated his face. I saw that face, the face I had on the rooftop in my previous life. Probably just like this, grayish-white, lips without color, eyes wide open, pupils like a camera failing to focus, staring at a point, but seeing nothing. "Liam," he called my name. The voice seemed to be squeezed out from the deepest part of his throat. Huh? I sat up, pretending to have just woken up. He held out his phone in front of me. On the screen was the homepage of the lottery app with a system announcement popping up at the top. Urgent notice, dear user, due to a system malfunction, the winning notification pushed to some users on the 15th of March 2024 was sent in error. The actual lottery purchase records of the affected users show no winning results. We sincerely apologize and will compensate affected users with a £50 platform voucher. £5 million turned into a £50 voucher. I stared at the screen for 5 seconds. Then I looked up at him. What? What does this mean? My voice held just the right amount of shock. A system glitch. Not real. He didn't say a word. His hands were shaking. The entire hand from fingers to wrist to forearm trembled uncontrollably like Parkinson's disease. The phone slipped from his grip and fell to the ground with a thud. Screen up. The announcement still glowing. Impossible. He crouched down, clutching his head with both hands. Impossible. I saw it. It was displayed on the app. 5 million. How could it be fake? His voice was trembling. Charlie also woke up. He poked his head out from the upper bunk, glanced at the phone on the floor, then at Zach, crouching on the ground, and remained silent. His gaze swept over me, a 1-second eye contact. I looked away. Zach squatted on the ground for about 10 minutes. Then he did something I expected. He started making phone calls. The first call was to the National Lottery HQ. He dialed 4 times before getting through, incoherently explaining his situation. While the customer service representative on the other end mechanically repeated the announcement's content, then said, "If you have questions, you may bring the relevant tickets to the National Lottery headquarters for on-site consultation." He asked, "What about my money?" The customer service representative said, "You did not win the prize." He nearly crushed the phone in his hand. The second call was made to Sophie. It rang 8 times, but no one answered. Second try, still no answer. Third try, it connected. "Zach, why so early?" Her voice sounded lazy. "Sophie. About that. The lottery thing. There's a bit of a problem." "What's the matter?" The app posted an announcement saying that the previous winning notification was a system glitch. Maybe it's not real. There was silence on the other end of the line for 3 seconds. "What do you mean you didn't win?" "I'm not sure either. They said they're verifying it." "Zach, tell me the truth." Her voice suddenly turned cold. "Did you really win the lottery? Where did you get all that money for the lottery tickets? Did you borrow it? How much do you owe?" Zach opened his mouth, unable to utter a single word. A rustling sound came from the other end of the phone. She was getting dressed. "Don't come over, Sophie. Listen to me." "I have nothing to listen to." "Zach, you handle it yourself." Ding, ding, ding. Hung up. He stared at the words "call ended" on the phone screen for a long time, then slowly placed the phone on the desk. He turned around and looked at me. There was something breaking in those eyes. Not belief, not hope, but something more fundamental called understanding of one's situation. He was gradually realizing where he stood. "Liam," he called me. I owe over £300,000. His lips were white when he spoke the number. "Where from?" I asked. "Credit cards, online loans. And from Terry." "How much from Terry?" £200,000. 3% monthly interest. I was silent for 2 seconds. Then I said a sentence. I had prepared this sentence for 14 days. "Zach, don't panic for now. Let me think of a way to help you." His eyes were red. He nodded vigorously. "Liam, thank you. You're my best mate. My best mate." In my previous life on the rooftop, when the wind blew into my collar, that's exactly what I thought of him. My best mate. My best mate who borrowed £143,700 from me and then disappeared. My expression remained completely unchanged. "First, go through the money you owe. See which parts can be paid in installments and which can be negotiated to postpone." He suddenly stood up as if he had grabbed a lifeline and started flipping through the loan records on his phone. What he didn't know was that while he was going through the records, I sent a message to Terry on my phone. "Big Terry, that £200,000 from Zach. He might be late with the payment." Terry Davies replied with 2 words. "Got it." Outside the window, the sun had risen to the exact center of the window frame. The light was bright, shining on Zach's face. He crouched by the desk, flipping through the bills one by one, muttering numbers under his breath. I stood behind him. A shadow fell across his back. Chapter 8. On March 30th, everything began to collapse rapidly. Zach spent the entire day contacting various online lending apps to negotiate repayment. The result was 2 platforms agreed to extend the deadline by 7 days while the other 4 refused. One of them immediately marked his number as a collection target, meaning that starting today, people in his address book would begin receiving collection calls and text messages one after another. The first person to be called was his academic advisor. At 3:00 the afternoon, head of year, Mr. Clark called him to the office. I don't know what they said inside, but when Zach came out, his eyes were puffy and his face carried the embarrassment of having been stripped bare. He returned to the flat, said nothing, and climbed straight into the upper bunk. The bed creaked once, then came a long silence. Collection text messages started flooding in. They weren't calling his phone. They were sending messages to the people in his contacts. That night, I received one that read, "Hello, your contact Zach has an overdue loan of £15,000 on our platform. If you are aware of his situation, please inform him to handle it as soon as possible. Contact number." I read this text message once and saved a screenshot. Charlie also received it. He glanced at it, flipped his phone over, and placed it face down on the desk, ignoring it. At least 5 or 6 coursemates also received it because someone suddenly posted a screenshot in the WhatsApp group chat asking what's going on. Then another person. "I got it too. I got it too. Zach owes money from payday loans. Didn't he win £5 million? That seems fake. App system failure. Holy. So all the money he spent on the steakhouse was borrowed." The group chat went crazy. Messages filled up 3 pages. Zach didn't speak in the chat. His phone was probably vibrating like crazy, but there wasn't a sound from the top bunk. The next day was March 31st. Big Terry's people arrived, 2:00 the afternoon. 2 people stood below the hall's building. One wore a black North Face jacket, had a crew cut, and the veins on his neck were thick. The other was shorter, wore a gold chain, and held an unlit cigarette in his hand. They didn't go upstairs. They just stood at the entrance of the building, glancing toward the 3rd-floor window. When Zach saw them at the window, his entire body froze as if nailed in place. "Liam." His voice was very, very soft. "Terry's men are here. I saw them." He turned his head to look at me, his eyes completely bloodshot. "Liam, can you help me think of a way? Talk to Terry. Ask for a few more days." I looked at him. In my previous life, it was the same back then. He owed money, ran away, and when the collectors couldn't find him, they came looking for me because I was his guarantor. A role he'd filled out himself without my consent. I was cornered in the corridor, pressed against the wall. A layer of skin was scraped off my forehead, a cigarette butt was extinguished on my wrist. Then he sent a voice message from Marbella. "That idiot is still helping me pay back the money to this day." I stood up, picked up my phone, and dialed Big Terry's number right in front of him. "Big Terry, Zach is here. He says he wants to talk to you about the repayment plan," Terry Davies said. "Tell him to come down." I handed the phone to Zach. His fingers brushed against mine as he took the phone. Cold to the touch. He went downstairs. I stood by the window, watching him walk out of the building's main entrance. The 2 men walked forward to meet him. They didn't hit him, didn't shove him. They simply stood on either side of him like 2 walls, trapping him in between. They headed toward the off-license shop at the end of the alley. Zach's back looked small. His back was hunched and his steps dragged like a sheep being led off to the slaughter. I drew the curtains. He came back around 9:00 the evening. His face was pale and lifeless, but there were no wounds. Big Terry had always been civilized in his ways. At least during the first few times, he sat on the chair and said word by word, "Terry gave me 10 days. Within 10 days, I must repay the principal and interest in full, £226,000. What are you going to do?" He was silent for a long time. Then he said one sentence. Those words made my blood rush to my head in an instant. I told Terry today that you're my guarantor. My hand clenched the edge of the desk. My knuckles turned white. My temples throbbed with a pulsing rhythm. He noticed the change in my expression and quickly waved his hands. Don't get nervous. Don't get nervous. I was just saying it off the cuff. Terry didn't take it seriously. You don't actually have to pay anything. It's just to buy me some time. You told him I'm your guarantor. My voice was very calm, so calm that he stopped his hands. When did you say that? The day you signed the IOU? No, just today. I mentioned it casually when I was talking to him today. Have you ever signed anything with my name on it? His eyes flickered for a moment. That flicker was very brief, but I caught it. It was guilt. No, he was lying. I'm certain. Because on the IOU that Big Terry took out in the previous life, the guarantor section was signed with the name Liam. The handwriting wasn't mine. It was Zach's imitation. It wasn't very convincing, but Terry didn't care how accurate it was. All he needed was a name. In this life, he did the exact same thing again. Zach. I stood up and looked into his eyes. This is the first time in 14 days that I've called him a mug without laughing. If you've signed my name on any IOU, I'll call the police right now. His face turned pale. I didn't. Check your phone. Open Terry's WhatsApp chat history. Let me take a look. He instinctively pulled his phone back behind him. That movement was the answer. I didn't say anything more. I picked up my phone and walked out of the room into the hallway. I dialed Big Terry's number. Big Terry, did Zach write my name as the guarantor on the IOU today? Terry was silent for a second, then laughed. Liam, you're quite well informed. Yes, he did write it. But don't worry. After all these years, can't I tell what kind of person someone is? That handwriting clearly isn't yours. Could you take a photo of that IOU for me? Sure, but what are you going to do with this evidence? All right. 3 minutes later, the photo was sent over in black and white. At the bottom of the IOU under the guarantor section, the name Liam was scrawled in crooked handwriting. The handwriting was completely different from mine. I saved this photo into an encrypted album. Then I did one more thing. I opened the university's online reporting system and submitted a written statement. Complainant. Liam. Respondent. Zach. Complaint details. The respondent privately forged my signature to act as a guarantor in a private loan. Suspected of forging documents and contract fraud. Attachment. One photo of the IOU. After submitting it, I stood by the window in the corridor. The moon was bright outside the window. I took a deep breath and exhaled. In my previous life, I only found out he was impersonating me when I was cornered in the hallway. By then, it was already too late. In this life, everything is just right. I returned to my room. Zach huddled under the covers on the top bunk, wrapping himself up like a cocoon. I climbed into my own bed and pulled the duvet over me. The moment I closed my eyes, an image flashed through my mind. The wind on the rooftop, the railing on the 14th floor, and the color of rust rubbing off on my palm. That color was almost the same as the ink he used to forge my signature on the IOU. It's all black. Chapter 9. April 5th. Exactly 1 week since that announcement was made. A lot has happened this week. Zach's parents came. His father is named Arthur, not very tall with skin so dark it gleams, and calluses on his hands as rough as sandpaper. The kind of hands that have worked on construction sites for a lifetime. His mother is named Margaret, half a head shorter than his father, wearing a faded blue floral fleece, her hair tied back with a black rubber band. They took an 8-hour coach ride from Barnsley, South Yorkshire to get here. When Margaret saw Zach, in the head of year's office, she first glanced at her son and her eyes instantly welled up with tears, but she didn't cry, only asking in a very soft voice, Zach, what's going on exactly? Mr. Clark asked them to sit down and briefly explained the situation. Then the members of the university disciplinary board arrived. I was there too because I was the party fraudulently guaranteed. The university notified me to be present to explain the situation. The meeting room was not large, with one long table and 8 chairs. Those present included Mr. Clark, Dr. Stevens from the disciplinary board, Zach, his parents, me, and an administrative staff member taking notes. Dr. Stevens opened a folder. Student Zach, regarding your recent situation, the university has conducted a preliminary investigation. I now have a few questions to verify with you. Zach sat on the chair, hunched over, his eyes fixed on the table. First, did you borrow money from multiple online lending platforms between March 15 and March 29, citing lottery winnings as the reason? Yes, the voice was barely audible. How much did you borrow in total? About £140,000. He gave a figure that was half of the actual amount. Dr. Stevens flipped through the documents. Judging from the bank statements and platform records you submitted, just the online loans alone exceed £120,000. Add to that about £80,000 in credit card overdrafts and the £200,000 you personally acknowledged in a private loan agreement, £200,000. Margaret's voice suddenly rose sharply. She turned her head to look at Zach, her eyes wide open. You borrowed £200,000 in high-interest loans? Zach lowered his head and said nothing. Arthur's lips moved slightly, but no sound came out. His hands rested on his knees, his fingers trembling faintly. Dr. Stevens continued, that is to say, Zach's current total debt amounts to approximately £400,000. The interest on the private loan portion is still accumulating due to the overdue payments. £400,000. The number echoed in the conference room for a few seconds. Margaret swayed slightly. Arthur reached out and supported her shoulder. I saw his hand clenched tightly on her shoulder, his knuckles turning white, just like the force he used to grip steel beams at the construction site. Second question, Dr. Stevens turned to me. Student Liam, you submitted a report claiming that student Zach privately forged your signature to act as a guarantor for a loan. Is that correct? Yes. I took out my phone from my pocket, enlarged the photo of the IOU, and placed it on the table. All eyes turned to the photo. The word guarantor and Liam on the IOU were clearly visible. Dr. Stevens passed the photo to Zach. Did you write this? Silence. Zach lowered his head, his shoulders trembling. Zach, Dr. Stevens' voice grew heavier. Did you write this? Yes. Margaret's tears finally fell. She made no sound. The tears streamed down her weather-beaten, deeply wrinkled face, dripping onto the collar of her floral fleece, staining it with dark spots. I'm sorry. Zach's voice broke. Liam, I'm sorry. I had no other choice at the time. I looked at him. I'm sorry. I waited for 2 lifetimes. In my previous life, I never got to hear it. When I stood on the rooftop, I thought if he could just say he was sorry even just once, I might not have been standing there. But he didn't. He was in Marbella. He was laughing. He said, that idiot. Now he spoke in front of his parents, in front of his tutor, in front of the disciplinary board. He said, I'm sorry. I looked at his face, distorted by tears. The sound of the wind from the rooftop in my past life echoed in my ears for a moment, very faint. Then it vanished. Student Zach, Dr. Stevens closed the folder. According to the university's disciplinary regulations, your actions involve the following points. First, borrowing a large sum of money under false pretenses, which raises suspicion of fraud. Second, forging someone else's signature as a guarantor without authorization, which constitutes document forgery. Third, the related borrowing activities have severely disrupted campus order and the normal lives of other students. The preliminary opinion of the University Disciplinary Board is expulsion from the university. Don't. Margaret suddenly stood up from her chair. Her knee hit the edge of the table, making a loud noise, but she didn't react at all. She took a step forward as if about to kneel down. Arthur swiftly grabbed hold of her. Sir, I beg you. Her voice trembled. He just made a mistake. He's about to graduate. If he gets expelled, his life will be ruined. Dr. Stevens' expression remained unchanged. This is the university's disciplinary decision which requires approval procedures before the formal decision is issued. Zach may submit an appeal. Margaret wanted to say more, but Arthur gripped her arm tightly and pressed her back into the chair. He spoke. This was the first thing he said after arriving. We will find a way to repay the money we owe. His voice was low and slow, as if each word was being squeezed out from the depths of his throat. The house back home is still worth some money. Selling it should be able to raise about $200,000 or $300,000. As for the rest, I'll figure something out. The house he was talking about selling the house in a small northern town in South Yorkshire. A construction worker's lifetime savings probably amount to that one house. I stared at Arthur's dark, grim face. I had never seen this face in my previous life because in that life, I had shouldered everything. And Zach's parents never knew what had happened from beginning to end. Student Liam, Dr. Stevens turned to me, regarding the part about forging the guarantor's signature. Have you considered reporting it to the police authorities? This question made the room fall silent. Everyone is looking at me. Zach raised his head. His eyes were as red as a rabbit's with snot and tears smeared all over his face. He looked at me in that gaze. There was fear, there was pleading, and there was a flicker of dying hope. He was still hoping I would let him go. Just like in my previous life. He expected me to help him repay his debts. I spoke up. I'm not considering reporting it to the police for now. I glanced at Arthur. The old man's fingers gripped the trouser line, his knuckles protruding as if tied in knots. But I have one condition. What condition? Zach's voice almost rushed out with the question. All parts involving my name in the IOUs and debt records must be revoked and declared invalid in writing. From now on, any of your debts have nothing to do with me. Black and white on paper, signed and sealed in triplicate. Zach nodded vigorously. My voice was so calm it even sounded unfamiliar to myself. When you borrowed the money, how you borrowed it, and why you borrowed it. You explain all of it clearly to your parents yourself. Don't leave out a single word. Zach's mouth hung open, and the color drained from his face once more. He turned his head to look at his parents. Margaret's face was expressionless. She sat there, her hands clenched together on her lap, her fingernails digging into the flesh of the back of her hand. Arthur looked at his son. The hands that had carried steel beams on construction sites for 30 years now rested motionless on his knees. Dad. Zach's voice was hoarse. Speak. Arthur said only that one word. Zach opened his mouth twice before he began to speak. He said everything. The lottery app's winning notification. The initial excitement. The subsequent reckless spending. The credit cards, the online loans, Sophie, Big Terry, that £200,000 loan shark debt. The money spent on designer bags and hotels. He spoke for about 15 minutes. The louder he spoke, the softer his voice became. In the end, it was almost a whisper. After he finished speaking, the conference room remained silent for a long time. Arthur stood up. He walked up to Zach. Zach instinctively flinched back. Slap. A slap. Very loud. Zach's head was knocked to the side and half of his face instantly swelled up. You beast. This is the second sentence, Arthur said. His voice was trembling. Not with anger, or not just anger. There was something deeper in it, as if something that had held up for 30 years had suddenly collapsed. After he finished that slap, his hand dropped down and he stood there like an old tree that had been uprooted. Mr. Clark came over and held him back. Margaret sat on the chair motionless, not crying, not speaking. She just stared at a certain spot on the floor, her eyes empty. I picked up the water glass on the table and took a sip. The water had already turned cold. When the meeting ended, Zach's legs were weak. He was practically carried out by his father. At the door, he glanced back at me. That look was complicated. There was hatred, shame, unwillingness, but more than anything, a despair that finally understood something. His lips moved slightly. I didn't catch what he said. No need to hear it clearly anymore. The door closed. Footsteps in the corridor gradually faded away. I stood alone in the conference room. Sunlight streamed through the slits of the blinds, falling in strips onto the table. I placed my hand on that patch of sunlight, warm. The spots on the palm that had been scalded, scraped, and squeezed until they bled in the past life were now smooth and clean. I slowly clenched my fist, then released it. As I walked out of the building, the wind from late March blew straight at me. It wasn't the wind from the 14th floor. It's the wind on the ground, blowing across the sports field, blowing through the green spaces, blowing past the oak tree by the roadside that is sprouting buds, and finally blowing onto my face. Warm, the wind in this life is warm. Chapter 10. I didn't deliberately inquire about what happened afterward, but some news just drifted my way. Zach was expelled. The final disciplinary notice was issued in mid-April. With the disciplinary board's approval process taking 10 days, he submitted an appeal, but the materials contained no effective defense. The facts were too clear, the chain of evidence too complete, and he had already admitted to everything during the meeting. At the end of April, Arthur listed his house in his hometown of Barnsley on a real estate website. 83 square meters, 2 bedrooms, and 1 living room. Listed price £260,000. That house was something he saved up for after 15 years of working on construction sites, 15 years of steel and concrete, 15 years of sun and rain, 15 years without ever buying a single piece of clothing over £20. It finally turned into a photo posted online. In the photo, the living room was small, the sofa was cloth, and the armrests had worn down to white cotton fluff. On the TV cabinet sat 2 photo frames. One was a childhood photo of Zach. The other was his secondary school graduation ID photo. The house eventually sold for £230,000. After deducting the estate agent's fee, he ended up with just over £210,000. In addition to the more than £30,000 Margaret had saved from odd jobs over the years and the £40,000 Arthur had borrowed from relatives by scraping together every bit he could, they managed to gather £280,000. It was enough to repay Big Terry's principal and interest. The remaining payday loans and credit cards still left a hole of about £150,000. Zach began to repay them himself. No job. He even lost his degree. He found a sorting job at an Amazon warehouse near the university, earning £3,500 a month with accommodation, but no meals. His living space was a partitioned section inside the warehouse. A 2-square-meter cubicle made of plasterboard, barely fitting a camp bed. I heard he lost a lot of weight. I learned all this from Charlie. Charlie didn't go out of his way to inquire. He happened to see it by chance when picking up a parcel. Zach was crouched at the warehouse entrance, sorting through parcels piled up halfway to his waist. He wore a high-vis vest, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing several dark scars on his arms, scratches from the edges of cardboard boxes. He said he was taken aback when he saw Charlie, then lowered his head and continued sorting. He didn't say hello. He doesn't talk much now. Charlie's tone was very flat as he told me this, completely different from before. I didn't say anything. Sophie left very thoroughly after saying "you handle it yourself" to Zach over the phone that day. She blocked his WhatsApp. She cleared all the photos with him from her Instagram and even put the Gucci bag and Jimmy Choo high heels on Depop, originally priced at £13,000. She listed them for £4,500. Her stories update very quickly. New selfies, new restaurant check-ins, new outfit of the day. Occasionally, there were a few photos with a new man, the one wearing glasses, driving a white Tesla. I paused for 2 seconds when I flipped to them, then swiped away. It has nothing to do with me anymore. Terry Davies, on the other hand, did give me some unexpected news. One afternoon in early May, he called me. "Liam, I've taken care of your mate's matter. The principal and interest have both been settled, and I've destroyed the IOU. All right. Thanks, Terry. There's one more thing." He paused. "That photo of the IOU you asked me to take before. The one with your name on it. Did you know in advance he'd use your name?" I didn't respond. He laughed on the other end of the phone. "You little kid. You've got more tricks up your sleeve than I do. All right, Come find me if you need anything in the future. Hangs up the phone. June. Graduation season. The campus is filled with people in graduation gowns taking photos with laughter and the sound of camera shutters blending together, drifting all the way from the library entrance to the sports field. I stood in front of the university building wearing my graduation gown and Charlie took a photo for me. Smile, he said, holding up his phone. I laughed. After the photo was taken, he looked at it and said, "Your smile looks a bit different now compared to before." What's different? Before, when you smiled, your eyes were curved, but now they're straight. I didn't respond. After taking the photos, I went to the campus shop and bought the cheapest £3.50 meal deal. While eating my sandwich, my phone received a text message. It was a job offer from a company, a local tech firm specializing in data analysis, £6,500 monthly salary, full benefits, and pension. Starting date July 1st. I stared at the message for a long time. £6,500. In my previous life, I went to the rooftop before I even graduated. No degree, no job, no future at all. In this lifetime, I've got it. The sandwich tasted very plain. Just basic cheese and ham. But I ate very slowly. I chewed every bite very carefully. It felt like I was savoring something. No, not the taste of the sandwich, but the taste of being alive. After finishing, I left the campus. As I passed by the high street, I saw a newsagent by the roadside. The window was plastered with colorful posters. Euro Millions, dream big. I stood at the entrance of the shop for a few seconds. My face was reflected in the window glass. A face, 22 years old, slightly thinner, but looking energetic, dressed in a graduation gown. What did this face look like in my previous life? I remember the last time I looked in the mirror was on the rooftop. Next to the railing was a stainless steel panel with a reflective surface, and I saw myself in it. Sunken eye sockets, colorless lips, like a corpse still walking. That person is not me. That person died in the previous life. I took back my gaze and left the shop. After taking a few steps, my phone in my pocket rang again. It's my mum. Liam, Mum saw the graduation photo you sent. You look so smart in it. Her voice was loud over the phone, with the background noise of clanking sounds from a construction site. Mum will transfer you £200 tonight. Go out and treat yourself and your mates to a good meal. Mum, no need. I'll start working next month, and from then on I'll send you money. What job are you going to take? You just graduated. Don't rush into anything. Mum, I interrupted her. Don't work at the construction site anymore. The other end of the phone went quiet for a moment. Wait until I get my first month's salary, then quit. I'll take care of you. She was silent for a few seconds, then she laughed. The laughter had a nasal quality, as if she was holding something back. All right, Mum. Wait. After hanging up, I stood at the campus gate. The June breeze blew in, passing through the wide sleeves of the graduation gown and rushing in from the neckline. The wind was warm, completely different from the wind that day. The wind on the 14th floor that day was cold, blowing upward from below, carrying dust and voices from the ground. Like a hand pushing you forward to take that step. The wind today is coming from the front, it blows past those taking photos on the green, those laughing, those living, it blows onto me. I straightened my graduation cap. The tassel on the hat was blown by the wind, swaying before my eyes. I reached out to brush it aside. Then I saw the road ahead, long and far, but every step is firmly on the ground, sturdy, warm, the kind that won't fall down. I took a step forward.